Kevin, teach us, please.
Okay, so for a first shleima for all the cholim of Klal Yisrael, and but this upcoming parasha, Kitzetzei, it continues with the theme of having sensitivity and just thinking of others, and even the one very interesting thing is if someone is sentenced to death and is hung, they need to be buried straight away. They can't be left hanging on the gallows for hours and hours or days on end, because that's actually considered a chilul Hashem, funnily enough, and it's an insensitive thing. I know it's we wouldn't think that way. It says, yeah, you may not allow his body to remain on the gallows overnight. You must bury it on the same day. So it's being sensitive to dead person as well, even though this guy might have been a bad person. It still shows sensitivity to even people like that. And then the one other thing is which is quite common, which I think most of us know about, is that if you see your friend's donkey with a heavy load, the donkey struggling, and the load falls off its back, you must put it back on its back, or maybe even help carry the stuff. It's also we must try have our eyes open even to peripheral vision and not just tunnel vision, and see what the needs of others are.
Okay.
Thanks, Kevin.
Kevin?
Easier said than done.
Easier said than done. And by the way, where you found that from, we learned in the 46 Daf of Sanhedrin, it's in Bet. Gavin hadn't joined the seal with Rav Simcha Steinhauer yet.
No, but I remember this, but maybe from some, I know this.
No, I know
the hanging
up. So basically, it's from Devarim, Deuteronomy chapter 21, verse 23. And if you remember, no, you weren't there. If you remember, you didn't only have to bury the hanged body, but you also had to bury the tree upon which the hanged body was.
No, really?
Yeah.
And if it's a fruit tree, you won't hang him on a fruit tree, so it won't be an issue.
No, very, very, very good. No, because they use the double verb, so that's where we learn it from, on the emphasis. But you shall bury, to cover, to get what I'm saying. So, so obviously, you can't hang a corpse on a tree that is still attached to the ground, because there are issues of cutting. It's a long story, but anyway, it is sensitivity to the death, and even there you bury the tree. Why do you bury the tree? Because you don't want them to walk past it and say, that's the tree that hung Shmerul on. No, so that was it. Interesting.
And also, doesn't the tree attract tumor? No, I don't know. I'm asking.
That's a good point. I have absolutely no idea, but I would think that that's a good point. All right, so let's get to our share. Kev, thanks, bud. Much appreciated.
Yeah, it was a nice refresher, but I enjoyed that. Thank you.
Now, if you remember, we touched on there before. Rav inquired with respect to the Rob Pop. Okay, take 21.
Start again.
Okay. Rav inquired with respect to the robbed property of a convert. Are the Kohanim considered like the convert's heirs, or are they considered like the recipients of gifts from the Most High? Okay. And the Gemara explains, well, okay, so whether you see them as inheritors or heirs, or recipients of gifts from the Most High, what's the practical difference? And we said one of the issues that was brought forward was when one robbed chametz from a convert, and the period of Pesach passed over it, and we returned it to the Kohanim. If you're going to say, guys, that the Kohanim are considered like the convert's heirs, then this chametz is what they inherited, and the robber discharges his obligation by returning it to the Kohanim, despite the fact that it's present worthless. Because as we know, if a Jewish robber keeps the chametz during the Pesach period, any Jew cannot get benefit from then on, not during Pesach nor afterward. So what are you returning to the original person, the victim upon which you stole? And in this case, if the victim died, to the Kohanim. But the fact is, even though that is the case, there certainly isn't a problem. Why? Because you could turn around and say, as far as the inheritors are concerned, if it was the original victim and he's still alive, what you do is, if you stolen a Shevis Regal, you give it before him and you say, look, I stole your Shevis Regal. Okay, it's worth it now, but what I've taken is before you. Enjoy. Now, that is a problem according to some sources, and other sources saying his mandate was just to return what he stole. So, that's why the robber discharges his obligation by returning it to the Kohanim, even if the monetary values, the article is still been returned. But if you say that they are considered gift recipients, the Kohanim, then the merciful one has told the robber to give a gift to the Kohanim in order to achieve atonement for his sin. So if he returns his prohibited chametz to the Kohanim, he hasn't given them anything, because it's considered like mere earth, meaning worthless. So the only way for the robber to discharge his obligation is by paying the Kohanim the amount of the chametz was worth at the time of the theft. And we said, look, there are possibly two reasons for it, according to this opinion. The one reason is, listen, do you think you're doing the Kohanim favors? You were told that you cannot have any chametz during your possession. Now you're sorry about another sin, so you're returning a sin to remind Hashem about your Pesach sin. That's a little odd. You get what I'm saying? It's like almost like you're keeping you're deciding that you're going to start to go shul to Mincha Maariv, but you're going to come with your car that you stole in a robbery. It's not going to be totally appreciated. So there has to be a case where you're not creating sin upon sin. So there's that. It's a bit slapping in the face of an atonement. Since it was forbidden on Pesach, you kept it during Pesach. The other aspect is, why are we paying atonement? Is because we want to rectify the sin. What is the sin of this robber? Twofold. He stole an item from a Jewish convert, and number two, he lied about it under oath using Hashem's name. So the money to him was more important. Now, if he just returns the object and it's worthless, it's not meaningful at all, because he can't sell it in order to retrieve its financial value, because no Yid would buy it, and he can't keep the money by selling it to a non-Jew, because you can't derive a derivative. Sorry, there's no derivative benefit through a sale of something that is prohibited either. Okay, so that's the other problem. So what made him use Hashem's name in vain and steal from the robber? Greed. And therefore, how do you remedy greed? By paying money over. So therefore, when money is paid over, there's an atonement for rectifying the base cause of the sin, and therefore, according to those opinions, would have to give to the Kohanim the financial value. Now, there's another reason. There's one third reason, and that third reason we covered is, if you're going to somebody for Shabbos and you're going to them straight after Pesach, or let's just say you're going to them for Pesach, can't take a bottle of whiskey there because it's prohibited for benefit. If they know you weren't from and you never sold your chametz, this is a halachic question, Kev. I know you're WhatsApping, it's not a problem. I can't hear you, Betty.
I forgot to send an urgent message. I'm listening to you. I'm just sending a quick message.
I'm not complaining. I'm just saying, as long as you.
Yeah, I'm listening. So I just need to. I forgot to do it. I just remembered now.
I watch all.
I'm listening. Carry on.
So what we're saying is as follows, Kev. If you have somebody at you for just after Pesach, and they give you a bottle of Shevis Regal, it might be that you're getting something that they never sold and had possession of during Pesach. You can't derive benefit from it. So it's a problem. If they give it to you on Pesach, it's definitely a problem. So why are we saying, if the Kohanim are gift recipients from Hashem, then that which is prohibited, you don't give to a guest if you go to his home for Shabbos, after Pesach or during Pesach. So that's another issue. So according to the first opinion, rectified this, and why you return what you stole. That's all your obligation. Whether it's worth this now is irrelevant. What you took, you goes back. But the person wasn't alive anymore, so you give it to the Kohen. According to the second opinion, well, why is it like that according to the first opinion? Because the inheritors would only inherit what the victim would have as their children and legal beneficiary. So what would you do to recompensate the victim is merely return what you stole. The fact that Pesach passed over it, well, sorry for him. I personally don't understand it. Gavin and I don't. We've had this discussion. But according to that opinion, when you return it, gave what is before him, what you took. So that's for, if you do that to the victim, you'd certainly do it to his heirs. So if Kohanim are treated as heirs, if you return it, that's sufficient. According to gift recipients, you never rock up at somebody's table, give them a gift that's utterly useless. So that is a problem, and that's the practical difference between both the cases. It's the only way for the robber to discharge his obligation is by paying the Kohanim the amount of the chometz that was worth at the time. So there is a bit of an issue as far as that's concerned. Is that Rav Zera doesn't agree. He says, look, even if you conclude and say that the Kohanim are considered gift recipients, we have no question about this matter of whether robbed item can be given to them after Pesach. Because Rav Zera is saying it doesn't make any difference. You may give them the chametz after Pesach, whether it's the heir or the gift recipients, and you can discharge your obligation in this manner. Because since the robbed property, that's the gift that the merciful one has told the robber to give the Kohanim. It means that what you would do to the person, you mirror what you do to the Kohen. In other words, it doesn't matter whether they're gift recipients, heirs, or the actual person. According to certain opinions, all you have to do is return that which you stole. And therefore, it doesn't make any practical difference, according to Rav Zera, whether they inherited it and they're heirs, or they're gift recipients from the Most High. Either way, if you could discharge your obligation to the victim in that way, there's no reason why you can't do it to the Kohanim. That's an atonement, is not to keep what you took. That's the atonement. Not all opinions hold like Rav Zera. Some say that Kohanim are seen as gift recipients, it's a problem, but as heirs not. Because as heirs, we treat them the same as you would treat the original victim and not his children. So then we want to say to Rav Zera, okay, that's fine. So then what, Rav Zera, would you say is the practical difference between them? And that is very, very simple. Whether the Kohanim are the converts' heirs or the gift recipients, it's regarding a case where 10 animals that were converts' robbed property fell to a Kohen. Is he obligated to separate the animal tithe from them or not? So what we said of it is that the other day, I mean, Kevin was put clear on this issue than I was, because Kevin's so strong in certain areas of learning and he's got a lot more experience than me. And one of the things is the Bechoros is the firstborn out of 10 that is consecrated, and the 10th is consecrated for Misa. Of what we call newborns, and they're marked with an X. So what we're saying is, well, what's the practical difference if the heirs or gift recipients? We're saying it's regarding the tithing. So if Kohanim are treated as heirs, Arthur, whenever a person gets a gift, whether it's hereditary, not hereditary, that's inherited, that's the right word, not hereditary. They'll get the gift of diseases from their parents. Don't you worry about the thing. But as far as inheritance is concerned, sorry, I'm in a bit of a whacked mood. So as far as the gift of inheritance is concerned, you give 10% away to Misa. That's obvious. If you win a car in a lottery or lottery money, if you earn in a business deal, things that are coming, financial benefits coming to you, tithe. So as far as if the Kohanim are treated as heirs are concerned, they have to tithe what is bequeathed to them in terms of offerings. But if they are treated as gift recipients of the Most High, in that particular case, Arthur, there's no tithing. Because if you get a gift, then at that point you don't have to tithe it. That makes sense. If you get a car as a gift, you don't have to get 10%. If you get cash as a gift, I don't know what the story is as far as that's concerned, but I'm sure it's okay. So certain things you don't have to tithe. Just to give you a bit more specificity, if you look in Bechoros 56b, the Torah in Vayikra, Leviticus chapter 27, verse 32 to 33, that's where the commandment of the tithing of newborn cattle, sheep, and goats occurs. Okay? But we learn that although if you buy an animal or you receive them as a gift, either way, according to Bechoros 56b in the Gemara, you're exempt from the tithing. When you earn money or inherit animals, then you are subject to a tithing. Because if you buy an animal, you say, but you're getting in animals. Okay, you're getting in animals, but you've bought it with what? With your cash. Now you've already tithed that cash that you earned when it came in at first. So you don't have to end up paying a double tithing, Kevin. You get it? Okay.
Yes, like double
That's
taxation.
Okay, so let me just explain.
You're going to pay a tithe once. Just repeat that
So
again.
exactly? So even though the animals are coming into your possession when you purchase them, you have purchased them with money, and that money, when it originally came in, you tithe because it was earnings. It went into credit, and then you pay on credits, on debits. You're okay. So at the point where you bought the animals, you might have gained the animals, but you've lost that money equivalent. Look at a trial balance or whatever the case may be. So you've paid a tithing already. You don't pay a tithing on the animals that you purchased. Newborn is obviously considered a gift from Hashem. So newborns of cattle, sheep, and goats, that's coming from your existing stock that you paid a tithing on, yes, but the newborn you're not entitled to. The fact that that new financial benefits that sprouted from your existing assets are interest, and tithing is payable on interest or any sort of dividends that you receive, such as newborns and animals. So if it's gift, or if you're buying animals, either way you're exempt from the tithing. So if the Kohanim are seen as gift recipients, they don't have to pay tithing on what is brought to the temple of what they partake in. If they're seen as heirs, they inherit it, and therefore they do have to pay a tithing on what they receive. And that's what Rabbi Zera is coming to teach. So we're saying, what is the status of a Kohen who received 10 animals that had been robbed from a convert? Is he required to tithe them or not? So the answer is actually yes, he is. Sorry, no, he's not, because he's seen as a gift. He's seen as a gift recipient from the Most High. So again, he's not entitled to tithe it because he's not seen as an heir. He's seen as a gift recipient, so he does not have to tithe those animals that come into his possession. Now, technically, Gavin brought up a good point. Is that we know from the previous case, the reason you can't barter is because it never really becomes yours. It's you're a gift recipient, exactly as Kevin said, Gavin said. And then Kevin brought a good example, and he was saying, well, how do we look at somebody that's a recipient? And we discussed the difference between the secular view and the halachic view. All right, so now what we're going to do is, before we get that straightforward answer, that the Kohanim are treated as gift recipients and therefore they don't have to tithe, the Gemara resolves the inquiry in quite a complicated way to teach us other things. But I thought, if we go through everything else, you're going to even forget the question, never mind the answer. So I think that was a pretty good summary of everything. So the Gemara resolves the inquiry. Come learn a proof from the following brisa. 24 Kohanic gifts were given to Aharon and his sons. And all of them were given in a generalization, specification, generalization, and a salt covenant. Now, I've got to admit, the first time I read this, I thought, what? Generalization, specification, generalization, a salt covenant. It sounds like what is this? So I had to learn it and break it up a little bit. There's a concept of Baklal, Uprat, or Vaklal. So that was a generalization, specification, and generalization. So what is this about? Now, we learned there was a difference between the two. If you remember, there are different methods that the Torah exposition can occur with. Okay, if you remember, I think on your Siddur, Kevin, it's on page, where is it, on page 36, or do you remember where it was, on page 38, on your Siddur, where you've got 38 methods of learning?
Yeah.
So you've got a Gazei Rishava, you've got a Hekesh, you've got generalization to specification. Then you've got generalization to specification back to generalization. So if you go general and then you go specific, you focus only on the specific. If you go from general to specific to general, you focus on the general within the parameters of the specific and not just the specific. Do you get what I'm saying? So that's the method of learning this. Now, just to give you an idea, what's this concept of generalization, specification, generalization, and the salt covenant? Guys, just hang on a second. I just want to close the door. Give me a second.
I'm extra terrible.
I love Arthur's t-shirts. So what's this generalization, specification, generalization? And what's the salt covenant? So the salt covenant is this issue of internal preservation. Let me just give you an idea of what it actually means. Okay, there's a pasuk in Bamidbar Numbers chapter 18, verse 8 to 19. And that's where we're learning this 24 Kohanic gifts that Aaron and his sons were given. So it begins with a general statement in the pasuk, and then it specifies these various specific gifts, guys. And then it finally concludes with another general statement. So what's the general statement? Hashem spoke to Aaron, all the holies of the children of Israel I've given to you for distinction. And then there's succeeding verses 9 to 18. And each of them specifically mention one gift. And then the final verse states in verse 19, a general statement, everything that I've separated from the holies I've given to you and your sons and daughters with you as an eternal portion. It is an eternal salt covenant before Hashem for you and your offspring with you. So obviously we've got general, specific, general, and the salt covenant, according to Rashi, is eternal. Why? Because look at the components of salt. Salt never spoils. It doesn't go off. You can keep salt in a container for 30 years, it never goes off. And if it never rots. In other words, even if you put water with it, it becomes like the ocean, and it dries and it evaporates, salt can still be used. So not only is salt eternal in that it doesn't age, we don't mean that it lasts forever and eons, but compared to other materials, it still becomes of use and edible, because salt has a myriad of healing properties, etc. But not only is salt in and of itself eternal, but it is used to preserve other things from spoilage. I'll give you an example. If you look at how biltong is made, salt and vinegar are part of the components, and obviously drying them. So you've got salting processes, you've got drying processes, you've got pickling processes, and salt is one of those things that preserve food. So it not only is self-preserving, but preserves others. So we are saying that in terms of the link of salt, Kev, you wanted to say something?
No, it's coffee there.
Are you okay, but
I ate too much salt today, that's why.
very funny.
But
So,
at least it's impossible that it was off, so at least it's safe.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. At least it
You're not
didn't
gonna
assault
get
me. It didn't assault me.
exactly. It wasn't
Yeah,
insulting to you, and it didn't assault you either.
Yeah, exactly.
And another crazy thing is honey is also is very similar to salt. It never goes off. It crystallizes. When you melt it down, it goes back to its original form.
So it's
Honey as well.
interesting you should say this, because
Salt
Yeah,
and
that's-
sweetness.
in the Gemara it does mention what Arthur's mentioning is
Mm.
that, do you remember that story? I think it was with Herod, and that woman committed suicide rather than being violated, and he preserved her body in honey.
Mm.
Do you remember that? Anyway,
not really, but it's interesting though. Thank you. It's good to know.
so okay, there are 13 humanetic principles of biblical exposition. That it says not 38. I apologize, guys, I was wrong. And it says that whenever there's a generalization, specification, and another generalization, it's to be expounded as included as all things similar to the specification. So in Leviticus chapter 2, verse 13, it's got a very unusual statement. It says, "You shall salt your every meal offering with salt. You may not discontinue the salt of your God's covenant from upon your meal offering. On your every offering shall you offer salt." I think salt seems important. I've never heard so many words of the word salt. So obviously, for temple offerings, it seems to be very, very important. So let me just give you the 24 Kohanic gifts. So let me just give you the categories. Firstly, 10 of those Kohanic gifts had to be granted in the temple. In other words, they had to be consumed within the temple courtyard, according to Rashi. 4 in the city of Jerusalem, within the city walls. And then the last 10 anywhere in the provinces throughout Eretz Israel. And then there are leniencies that you can even consume them outside Eretz Israel. But according to most of the opinions, the last 10 are within Israel, but it doesn't have to be within Jerusalem, nor does it have to be within the temple walls. Now, the 10 gifts in the temple, these are the temple categories, is the meal that consists of the meat of the animal chatas offering and the meat of the bird chatas offering. So both the animal and bird chatas offering, chatas after is a sin, are kodshei kodashim. It's the most holy of offerings, whose meat is given to the kohanim and may be eaten by them only in the temple courtyard. And the meat of the definitive asham offering and the meat of the questionable asham offering. So what's a definite asham? That's brought on account of certain specific sins where you are sure of the sin that was committed and others are sure. Whereas a questionable asham, it's brought in the case of a doubtful sin. Okay, so if you look at a definite sin, there are 5 offerings. The asham bought by a robber who swore falsely. In other words, he robbed the item and he used a false oath using Hashem's name. So that is definite, because there's court stenographers that basically write down, even in those days, what had transpired in the witness and testimony. And then the asham brought by one who committed me'ilah. In other words, he misappropriated temple property for his own benefit. Another definite sin is the asham brought by one who cohabited with a half-freed Canaanite maidservant who had been betrothed to a Hebrew slave. I'm going to repeat that again. The asham brought by one who cohabited with a half-freed Canaanite maidservant who had been betrothed to a Hebrew slave. The fourth one is the asham brought by a Nazir who contracted corpse tumor. And the last one is the asham brought by Metzora at the conclusion of his purification process. So the Tana counts this entire category as one kohanic gift, so to speak, technically. Now, if we look at the questionable asham, it's brought by one who's uncertain whether he inadvertently committed a sin that carries the kares penalty. So kares is very, very serious. It's spiritual excision from the Jewish people and separation from Hashem. So if he definitely, guys, knows that he transgressed, he's going to bring a chatas. But since he's not sure whether he transgressed or not, he brings an asham, and that's in Vayikra, Leviticus chapter 5, verse 17 to 18. But the reason he does that is in the interim, until he gets clarity, this protects him from any heavenly retribution for the suspected transgression until the matter is clarified. If it's determined that he did commit the transgression, he then has to bring a chatas offering. So it might cost him more. And this is in Christos 26b. Now, the thing of it is, I don't know if he's in doubt or the people that witnessed him are in doubt. So that would be interesting. But as far as that's concerned, it would make sense if he clarified that, because he saves a fortune of money. So I think it's probably encouraging him to come clean. So that's in Christos 26b. So Christos are all of the kares penalty. That book of Gemara deals with that entirely. So both guys for the definite sin and the questionable sin. The asham offerings are kodesh kodashim, the holiest of holies, and that meat is awarded to the kohanim for consumption in the temple courtyard only. And that's in Mishnah Zevachim 54b. Okay, so see what we're looking at as far as time is concerned. We've still got a few minutes. Okay. Now, the meat of the communal shalamim offerings. Okay. So what was that? It refers to 2 lambs that are offered on Shavuos. So as an accompaniment to the 2 loaves offering. So basically in Vayikra, Leviticus chapter 23, verse 19, on Shavuot, those 2 lambs that are known as shalamim come with the bread. It says that they shall be holy for Hashem, for the Kohen, and that's separate to the shalamim brought by individuals, because individuals can bring it not during Shavuot. And those that are brought by individuals are not known as Kodshim Kodashim, they're known as Kodshim Kalim, which means they're offerings of lesser holiness, whose meat is permitted to Israelites, not just Kohanim, and they can be eaten anywhere in Jerusalem. Compare that with the communal shalamim, and those are Kodesh Kodashim, that's most holy. They can only be eaten by Kohanim in the temple courtyard. So they are 2 different sort of offerings, because those are principally for the Chag of Shavuot. They're for the entire community, and they have to be eaten by Kohanim only, not Israelites, and within the temple courtyard. Now, the log of oil of the Metzora. Okay, so Metzora's purification process, he's got to bring these 3 offerings. He's got to bring an ola, a chatas, and an asham, along with a log of oil. So the Kohanim apply some blood of the asham to the Metzora's right ear, right thumb, and right big toe. Then he pours part of the oil into another Kohen's left palm. Okay, so there's another Kohen involved, and then that Kohen with his right hand sprinkles some of it towards the Holy of Holies 7 times, and applies some of the oil to parts of the Metzora's body that had blood applied to them, and puts the remaining oil in his palm upon the Metzora's head. So the rest of the log of oil, which is remaining in the flask, that's distributed to the Kohanim for consumption, and that's derived from a pasuk in Bamidbar, Numbers chapter 18, verse 9. That every offering stated in the passage of the priestly gifts, which a Bryce in Zevachim 44b expounds as referring to that which remains from the Metzora's quantity of oil, can be consumed only in the temple courtyard. Okay, now the remainder of the Omer offering. So what does that consist of? Is that on the second day of Pesach, a mincha offering consists of an omer measure of barley flour, and it's offered up. That's in Vayikra, Leviticus chapter 23, verse 10 to 11. And a kometz, which is another measurement, is separated from it and burnt on the altar, and the remainder is eaten. It may be eaten only by the Kohanim in the temple courtyard. Okay, and since all mincha offerings, as you know, guys, are in the category of Kodesh Kodashim, which is stated explicitly, if you want to look at Vayikra chapter 7, verse 10, it's most holy like the Chatas and the Asham, as it's quoted, and obviously has to be consumed in the temple courtyard. So that's the remainder of the Omer offering and the 2 loaves offering. So on Shavuot, in addition to the issue where there were 2 lambs, 2 loaves of leavened fine flour, wheat, are brought together with a group of animal offerings. And no part of the bread, guys, is offered upon the altar, only the meat. And there's a certain part left over. And they elevated the bread to the status of an offering when the shlalem offerings that accompany them, which are the meat, are sacrificed. So the 2 loaves are in the category of the mincha offerings, which are kodesh kodashim, and they can only be eaten by kohanim in the temple courtyard. Okay, and then we've got the panim bread. Okay, so every Shabbat, 12 loaves made of fine wheat flour are arranged on the table in the temple. There's the shulchan, along with 2 spoonfuls of levana. So every Shabbat, whatever the previous week's loaves are, they have to be removed and replaced with 12 fresh loaves. So no part of the loaves is offered up, but the spoonfuls of levana are burnt upon the altar, and the loaves are eaten by the kohanim. So those loaves are kodei kodashim and must therefore be eaten in the courtyard of the temple, and they're considered as mincha offerings from Leviticus, Vayikra chapter 24, verse 5 to 9. And the remainder of the mincha offerings, let's just see how much time we've got. Okay, so that's what we've done today. We'll go through the rest of the list tomorrow. Yep, Kev?
So Damon, so if it's kodashim, it has to be eaten only in the courtyard. But you're about to say, if some offerings don't have an element of kedusha, they can be eaten outside. They can be eaten outside the complex. Is that what you were going to say now?
Yeah, no. So what I was saying is, if you look at, there are shlamim offerings that are brought by individuals. They don't have to be kohen, Kevin, but they still have kedusha, but they're known as kodashim kalim, which are lesser holiness to kodashim that obviously are in the temple, that are eaten by the kohanim. Okay, so in other words, they're all holy, but some are obviously on a higher level. So kodesh kodashim are only eaten by kohen in the temple courtyard, and when you look at kodesh kalim, that can be eaten by an individual, and it doesn't have to be eaten in the temple courtyard.
Sure.
But a normal Jew, yeah, that's about the sum of it. But it's still holy. It's just not on the same level.
Sure.
So
Thanks, sir.
Pleasure, guys. Have a great evening.
Thanks, Damon. Thanks.